So, if you live in the U.S., you are probably aware to the Syrian refugee, I don't know, crisis going on right now between the left and the right in the U.S. Is that a good way to put it?
I'm not entirely convinced that's the best way to put it. It's a massive crisis, and it doesn't just involve the U.S. There's so much going on in the world that trying to focus just on us is as egocentric as Europeans believe us to be.
That's probably true. I mean, yeah, it's a big problem in the EU as well, but they've already been accepting refugees for decades. I don't know about the whole Syrian conflict. Well, they have been accepting Syrian refugees recently, and we've seen how that's uh, taken hold in that area with the Cologne New Year's attacks and everything. Um, but I take I'm really conflicted on the issue because as much as I detest Islam and pretty much everything that it stands for, I can't say no refugees whatsoever because that then I'm going against what everything the Constitution stands for, and it's like, do I decide to uphold my hatred for uh, a set of ideals that I find repugnant, or do I uphold my ideals that I think build a foundation for intelligent discourse without like putting lives in danger?
And that's a difficult line to walk. I can't disagree with that there. But let's consider the area where all of this is taking place. There's Israel, Syria, Jordan, Lebanon, Iraq, Turkey, and Saudi Arabia, all in this tightly bunched area of the Middle East. And on the outskirts of that, you have Armenia, Azerbaijan, and so on. These are all within certain reason, particularly Israel, very tolerant of Muslims and people who share that belief. There's actually a minister of, I believe it's finance or something like that, in Israel who is a Muslim who came from, I believe it was either Jordan or Saudi Arabia. And he moved to Israel because there were better job opportunities, and through the course of events, as he became a citizen of Israel, he attained a position as a practicing Muslim, as a senior minister in Israel. And so
Wow.
you have an entire area of countries here that don't just understand Muslims, but they share their beliefs. They share the same ideals as these people do. So my objection to Syrian refugees coming here and those who claim to be Syrian refugees, because some new studies have shown that as many as 60% of those fleeing the Syrian region claiming to be refugees are not even from Syria.
Yep,
They're
I've seen
escaping
the same
other
studies.
regions of the Middle East who believe that they can use this as an opportunity to get out and spread Islam throughout the world.
Yeah. Chances are you guys are probably looking at the same study on screen right now.
But on top of that, we have the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia that actually have entire regions that were previously dedicated to entertainment and other things, where there are air-conditioned tents and places to get food nearby, where many of these people could be housed. Certainly not 9 million of them, and I believe that's what the number is up to
Is that
about now, is 9,
wow?
9 million people having fled Syria. It's
Damn.
not a small number of people.
Oh, definitely not. Which is why I thought it was kind of weird that we're only consider like if we're gonna even consider it, why only consider 10,000? Or is that's the number we're considering letting in, right?
I thought it
Or
was 35,000 was what Obama had said most recently was
oh,
35,000.
maybe it's
I may be
changed.
confusing that with Canada because Canada just had Justin Trudeau, the prime minister, I believe, up there who said he wanted to bring in not just 10,000, but 2.5 or 3 times that much into the country. And he was trying to do it so fast that the areas that are supposed to be housing these Syrian refugees are overflowing and they can't get enough food to them. They can't get enough housing. The places that are trying to register them and give them some kind of tracking number so that they can receive the benefits that the country is offering them are so overwhelmed they just can't keep up with the flow.
Wow.
And I'm afraid of that happening here because we can already see what that has done in areas of London, in areas of France, the problems going on in Germany right now that are just unfathomable in the extreme. It's hard to even picture what's going on.
Yeah, it really is. Like the cops there were so just unprepared for it that they didn't even realize it was happening until like 3 days later, or at least that's what they try and say.
I'm sure there was some inkling of what was going on. I don't
Yeah.
think they were entirely behind the ball, but for the government to actually take a stance on this and say, we want you to crack down, we believe this is a problem, okay, we're going to actually acknowledge that our policies caused this.
Yeah.
And that's the 3-day delay, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But back to the crisis itself. I mean, we're looking at 9 million people in one of the oldest still running civilizations on the face of the planet.
Yep.
Thousands of years of history are in Syria, or were, until the fighting went there and museums started to be destroyed. And I believe there was an article in an archaeological summary that I was talking about that said one of the oldest Christian populations in the entire world, something like 1500 years, was a Christian community of these 2 or 3 small towns, and they had a few museums with artifacts from the area where they built the first churches in the entire world
Oh
and
wow.
started to worship the Christian God. And those communities were among the first hit, and I believe some reports said that as many as 200 or 300 of these Christian Syrians were rounded up and had their heads cut off because of their beliefs. And so that's what the Syrians are running from. And I think it's callous to sit back and say, well, we don't want them here.
Yeah.
And that's what a lot of people are capitalizing on, particularly social justice warriors and those who take
Almost
up the
definitely.
banner of them,
Yeah.
saying, oh, you're just insensitive, you want babies to die. No, that's not what any of us want. What we want is for the Muslim populations in this region, Iraq and Iran and Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates and Jordan and Lebanon and those areas that are not just friendly to, but entirely saturated with the same culture that these people are being displaced from. And so it is kinder to these people who are running away to put them in an area where other people are going to understand, where all the meals simply are halal, where we don't have to get state regulations to force manufacturers to create halal meals for these refugees. They're going to a place where they already are because that's the culture. That is what already exists there. Mm-hmm. And so in my mind, it is kinder to work with these governments in the form of material aid of some kind. I don't know how it would be supervised, but instead of just dumping money into people's laps, which is essentially what's happening in Canada and Germany and France, where they have no idea what to do. And so they just bring these people in, dump a whole bunch of money in their laps and say, well, try not to spend too much of it.
Yeah.
And that's not smart. It's like giving a 12-year-old your credit card. You just don't do it. It's just, it's a bad idea.
Yeah.
But being able to say, hey, we'll make sure that there are blankets of the appropriate material, and that they have clothing and stuff like that, and we can get American companies to donate that to other countries to ease the burden of these refugees fleeing Syria into the areas around it until Syria calms down and they can return and start rebuilding.
That, I
To
mean,
my
that's a
mind,
that is a damn good standpoint, and I wholeheartedly agree with pretty much everything you said.
but that's my stance, is it is a greater kindness to keep these people closer to that region of the world where it will be easier for them to integrate, easier for them to continue their lives as close to normal as can be in this horrific situation.
We've been talking about pretty much reasons why we shouldn't accept them. Do you want to take a minute to kind of look over some of the reasons why we should?
Unfortunately, I don't have very many. It's just
There's the common sense ones of obviously it's first and foremost to say no people of like Muslim descent are could be allowed into America. It's unconstitutional and it's hypocritical.
I disagree.
Okay.
During World War II, Japanese were banned from entering the country, as were Germans. In some cases, Japanese families whose allegiances weren't entirely set were rounded up and put into internment camps, all of their property taken away because they may have taken news from America and sent it to Japan, giving them an advantage in a war that they were already kicking our butts in. And so there was a fear of it. And while these attacks were happening on American soil, while the Japanese were bombing Pearl Harbor and sending warships within 100 miles of the coast of California,
Yeah.
I believe some Japanese submarines were actually discovered in the Gulf of Mexico.
Oh
In the
yeah.
Gulf of Mexico.
German
With
U-boats too.
German U-boats as well, with weapons that could have reached out and devastated American cities. And so there was a very real fear that attacks were going to happen here. Now we're facing a situation in which attacks are happening here. Not only are happening here, but ISIS leaders have come out and specifically said, every opportunity that we have, we are going to take our soldiers and we are going to infiltrate these Syrian refugees. And when you bring them to your countries and welcome them with open arms, they will stab out at you and we will laugh.
Yeah. Yep,
So
I've seen the exact same statement.
when we have ISIS leaders saying that they are going to take advantage of this to attack America and London and all of Western civilization, which they believe is evil. ISIS believes, not necessarily all Muslims.
Yeah.
But overwhelmingly, those who belong to ISIS are Muslim. If you are not Muslim, ISIS kills you.
Yeah, precisely. And
So
even some Muslims, if they disagree with them slightly, they're like the SJWs of
exactly.
Muslims.
There are something like 19 different subcultures of the Muslim faith.
Yep.
19 different types of Islam, and don't quote me on that. I'm not an Islamic scholar, but there are so many different variations in interpretation of the Quran, and so it's a very nuanced and deep, powerful, old religion.
Yeah.
And so to say that all Muslims are bad is just as dumb as saying that all Christians are bad because of the Westboro Baptist Church.
Yeah,
However,
I agree.
However, when you have ISIS commanders, these people that we know are killing people right now, that we know are kidnapping little girls and selling them as sex slaves, these people who we know are evil, and they're saying, we are going to do this if you welcome Syrian refugees into your land. At what point does it become a dumb tactical decision to say, you know what, let's kind of hold off on that for a minute?
Mm-hmm.
Because how do you know who is actually Syrian and who isn't? Are we going to sit there and test people's DNA and wait 3 days for a result on every single one of 9 million people fleeing a region?
Yeah.
All of the records of who is Syrian and who is not were kept locally in these tribes and cities and areas, and all of that has been destroyed. Every record of Syrian families, as maybe not every, but many records of who is Syrian and who was a lawbreaker and who did this and who did that is gone. And so we've got the president saying, well, we're going to thoroughly vet every single one of these people. Against what data? The head of the FBI came out and said, we can query the databases until the cows come home. There's no data there. We have nothing.
Yeah,
And
I haven't looked into that side of it, but
so when you're looking at that kind of a thing, why would we let them here? If we have a promise from people who are attacking us and our allies right now, that they are going to use this as an opportunity to attack us again, why would we say yes? Why would we not simply say, you know what? Nobody who claims to be a Syrian refugee right now. Or if you come to our ports, we are going to put you in this area. It will be comfortable. You will be fed. You will be clothed. There will be bathing areas. And you can have your safety right here. But you're not going to be able to leave it because we do not know who among you belongs to ISIS. And we can't know.
well,
There is no possible way.
yeah, and I agree, but I just want to play devil's advocate for a second. I think a lot of people that are just die hard, bring them all in, their refutation to that would be, well, we're already seeing attacks before the refugees are in, so why not? I mean, obviously attacks are going to happen regardless. There's going to be Muslims that grew up in America that are able to be converted to extremism, and that's fact. You cannot ever get rid of extremism entirely. But
Nor can you get rid of any sort of human nature like that. And to those people, I would say this, then give up your argument on guns immediately. If that is what you believe, then stop trying to take away guns right now.
that's true.
Because attacks are happening right now with guns, and people are being shot anyways, so why not just let them exist? The argument itself sounds good on the surface, but it's deeper than that, and it is much more complex.
Yeah. And well, I don't think a lot of the liberal left wants to ban guns wholeheartedly, but that's another discussion for another day. I think we've made our point really well as far as they're not using the resources they already have available to them, and it's pretty blatantly obvious based on recent events in Europe that even if you're not an extremist, our culture does not mesh well with theirs. There's a phenomenon called Taharush. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's literally it's a Muslim word for when a bunch of dudes surround a woman and start groping and raping her, and they have more guys keeping other people from helping. And you can go and find surveillance footage of this happening in Cologne on New Year's Eve. 30 Muslim males from North Africa in the Middle East surrounding one female and groping her and just pinning her down and not letting her leave for sometimes an hour long. And then they have another 10 people surrounding that group, keeping everybody from doing anything to stop it. And these aren't even extremists. These are Muslim men that are not... They've never seen a woman in flashy, somewhat revealing clothes. So their culture teaches them that when a woman dresses like that, yes, they are asking for it. And you get these SJWs defending it when a Muslim does it, but completely detesting it when they think a white guy did it. And that is a big thing that made me take a step back and go, this is something we need to either educate them on, or if that's even possible, to convince somebody who's been raised in that environment to not just fucking gang rape a woman for wearing short shorts or something. and being slightly intoxicated? Or are we going to start teaching our own American and European women that they need to have a man bringing them everywhere? Because at this point, that's pretty much, if we decide to let the refugees in, that's what we have to do. Those are really the only two solutions.
I don't entirely agree, and I think that's a problem with the cultural meshing. At that point, we become no better than them. At that point, their culture begins to overtake ours.
Yeah.
And there's a cult of multiculturalism, and I call it a cult because it's a belief system. It's not a well-reasoned, well-thought-out ideology, in my opinion. I know there are people who would argue against that, and in ways they are correct. But when you talk to the average multiculturalist, they say, well, all cultures are equal, all cultures are perfectly, exactly alike. And you say, well, what's the capital of India? What is the principal export of Nepal? What are the core religious beliefs of Islam? When you begin to ask them these questions, it's very telling how quickly they back up and say, well, I don't need to know anything. I'm just really tolerant and nice. And so when that's the extent of their multiculturalism, when it's okay to be multicultural, when it's cool to be multicultural, as long as you don't have to actually know anything, there's a problem. And it's a problem in understanding. You have to understand that not all cultures are equal. Some are, in fact, better than others. Some belief systems are not equal. Some are better than others.
Yeah, definitely. But that is subjective in the end.
I disagree on that point as well. It's not entirely subjective. How many people have been killed in the name of Christianity? How many people have been killed in the name of Islam? The numbers aren't even close.
Yeah.
It's something like 13 million for Christianity, which is horrible. It's not a good track record. And not all of it, in my opinion, was true Christianity either. It was people distorting what the religion believes. However, the Mecca Quran, which is what a tiny subsect of Muslims believe, and the later Quran that was written as Muhammad aged, and began to become frustrated in the fact that his Mecca Quran had only attracted a tiny section of followers, something like 150, 200 people. Over a decade, he had gotten maybe 200 followers. With the Mecca Quran, which is the Quran that reads, you have your religion and I have mine. It is the Quran of peace. But he wrote a second one that was filled with tales of death and destruction and rape and slavery and war, and describes very specifically that under these situations, if people are not accepting Muslim, you must do this to them. If they refuse to convert to Islam but will submit to dhimmitude, you become essentially a slave of the Muslims. You have to pay an extra tax. You are not allowed into markets at certain times of day. If a Muslim man desires your wife or your girlfriend or your sister or your daughter, you must give her to him. That is Sharia law. That is dhimmitude under Sharia law. And that is the tenet of what these people believe.
Yeah.
And when you begin to look at that versus Christian law, and the laws of the United States have been influenced by Christianity, even if they were not written by Christians or specifically with Christians in mind. They were built on a Christian philosophy, and those laws are better than Sharia. Those laws abolished Jim Crow laws. Those laws abolished slavery. Those laws changed the course of an entire culture to become one of the greatest in Western civilization. Still far from perfect, but not just arguably better, verifiably better than Sharia, where you can look and say, do Americans live a better life than those who live in many Muslim countries? Not all. The United Arab Emirates live extremely well.
Oh, yes.
So well, in fact, that if they spread their wealth out to other sections of the Muslim world, all Muslims would live a better life. But all Americans, the worst Americans, the poorest Americans, I should say, not the worst, but the poorest
Good correction.
Americans still live a better life than many of the richer Muslims in Islamic countries.
Oh, yes, by far.
And so at that
We
point,
get power 24 hours a day. Boom.
you have verifiable evidence on so many layers that American culture is better than Syrian culture and Iran culture and Iraqi culture. It's just better. The religion is better. There are things wrong with it, and there are people who use it to kill and maim and destroy, just as ISIS is doing with Islam. But Islam strictly allows for it, whereas if you actually read through the Bible, you find that all wars that took place were in the Old Testament before Christ's coming. All of the wars that God said, okay, go forth and kill these people because you must, were in the Old Testament. And they were meant as laws for Israel in that age, not as laws for all Christians. They are stories meant to guide and instruct, to say these horrible things happened. Do not repeat them. And when you look at the Bible like that versus the Quran, which says right now, enslave and kill and destroy.
Yeah. Well, there's been many studies shown that, and I'm a pretty avid historian. I wouldn't classify myself as a historian, actually, because I've never gone to school for it, but I spend a lot of my spare time watching historical documentaries, reading historical articles and books, stuff like that. I'm in the progress of reading a 1,200-page complete biography on the Civil War right now. But Islam, it's a theory, but it's based on very strong evidence that Muhammad founded Islam as an excuse to pillage and burn.
But he didn't, though, and the Mecca Quran proves that.
Well, maybe not at first, but once he saw sight of the power that he could attain just through preaching and sharing these ideals. I mean, I think power can go to a lot of people's heads, no matter how they preach about how they feel. Their actions show different.
That's my argument against bringing them here. I don't have many reasons to bring them here. The evidence mounts up so very overwhelmingly against it.
I agree.
And I feel for these people, and I have seen some of them during my service in the military whose lives were destroyed, and I do have great compassion for them, and I understand some of their loss. But to allow ISIS to take advantage of that, to bring that death and destruction and devastation here, is not the greater good.
I agree. So, guys, you've heard our opinions on it. Let us know what you think down in the comments below. If you want to scream at us and call us racist, I mean, go right ahead, but we probably won't reply because you're probably stupid. Sorry. But we might have a Facebook page at this point. I'm not entirely sure, but if we do, then you can check that link in the description and send us a message on there. And if you disagree with us, tell us why. Link to some sources. We'll give it a decent examination for sure.
Yeah, definitely. We'd love to hear what you think. Have a good one.
Yep. Have a good one, guys.